Hey everyone, I'm going to show you how to do this classwork so that way you can do the homework, or it'll most likely turn into classwork on your own. So, function notation, graphing function notes. So this is our function right here. It's in terms of f of x. We can look real quick that this is in slope-intercept form, and if it was an equation, we can just put it like this, change the notation, and this would essentially be slope-intercept form, where my slope is -3/4 and my y-intercept is 6. So first, remember when we have this notation, we're not putting this in for this part. This is my input. This says, hey, when I am putting -2 for my x value, what will my output be? So for all of these next 5 inputs, we're going to calculate that, and then we're going to get an output. So I'm going to rewrite the original expression, 3/4 times -2, and instead of this x right here, I'm just replacing it with this plus 6. So when I calculate this, I get 6/4 plus 6. 6/4 is the same thing as 1 1/2, and that leads us to 7 1/2. As an ordered pair, this could be written as -2, 7 1/2. And why it's like this is because, again, my x value, or my input, or my domain, is -2, and after I'm done plugging it into my function, then my output is going to be 7 1/2. So now let's do the same thing, but with -1. So we have -3/4 times -1. We also have to plus the 6. That's -3/4 plus 6. That's going to equal 5 1/4. So this ordered pair, my input or my domain would be -1. My output would be 5 1/4. For 0, -3 times -3/4 times 0 plus 6. That's going to give me 0 plus 6, which is just 6. This ordered pair would be 0, 6. From there, we have -3/4 times 1 plus 6. It gives me -3/4 plus 6. That's going to equal 5 1/4. I just saw where I made a mistake. I'm going to go back and fix my mistake. Negative times a negative is a positive. So let's go back to f of -1. That should have been a positive, which is going to change our answer right here. So that is going to be 6 3/4. Now we're going to see later on, when we're supposed to graph it in letter D, that if I would have kept that answer, that it wouldn't have made sense, and I could have saw that I did something wrong, and I could have went back and checked my work then. So this ordered pair is going to be 1, 5 1/4. Next we have f of 2, -3/4 times 2 plus 6. And that's going to be 6/4 again, but -6/4 plus 6. So that's -1 1/2. So that's going to give me 4 1/2. So this ordered pair is going to be, my input is 2 and my output is 4 1/2. B, write 5 ordered pairs that are associated with part A. I already did that, so I'll just copy and move it. And then copy and move this. Let's try to keep it in order, make it nice and easy for us. Next one was -1, then 0, then 1. And there you go. And we could separate our ordered pairs with a comma. Next, it says fill in the table. So, when my input, my x, was these numbers, right? What are these numbers? I have my outputs. So, my first ordered pair is -2, 7 and 1/2. Then I'm just going to replace that. I'm just going to keep moving all of these ordered pair values into the table. And finally 2 and 4 and 1/2. All right, next, graph f of x given that -4 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 10. Is this a domain or a range restriction, and why? So, we can graph all of these ordered pairs right now. So first one would be -2, 7 and 1/2. -2, 7 and 1/2. It'll be about right there. Then we have -1, 6 and 3/4. -1, 6 and 3/4. About right there. 0, 6. 1, 5 and 1/4. And then we have 2 and 4 and 1/2. So we can make a straight line with this, and this will be a function. I could probably do a better job making that straight line. My starting, my ending. All right, that line is a little bit better. So, real quick, I want to go back to where I made the mistake. This mistake I made, I said -1 and 5 and 1/4. This is clearly a function. This is clearly a straight line. If I would have kept this mistake right here, I would have gotten an answer of this, 5 and 1/4. So my line would have went from here back up to here, and then back down here, and that would not have made sense. So that would have gave away that we actually did the math wrong and came about the wrong answer. All right, so is this a domain or a range restriction? So let's talk about this. This is saying my x has to be greater than -4, but then my x also has to be less than or equal to +10. So I'm going to erase the line with this. So my x value, we know my x value is, my x coordinates are on this line. Change my eraser type. I think that's right. All right, so my x cannot be less than -4. So I go a little too much. I go right up to there. And then my x cannot be greater than +10. So there won't be any overhang right here. I'll just make that go up to +10. So this will be what my line looks like. This is adding a restriction to the line. And what we restricted is the domain. Why the domain? Because it literally says right up here, the x. X is the domain. Yes, we did in turn restrict the y value also, because now it can't go infinitely forever, both in the y directions. But this condition right here told us to restrict the x. So technically, we're restricting the domain, the x. So the beautiful thing with E and F is we can use the graph to solve this. If y equals, so we can basically figure out this as an ordered pair. We can do this two ways. If f of x is or equals 7.5, find x, we can say, hey, we have an ordered point here, or ordered pair. 7.5. On this line, when my y value is 7.5, which looks like right here, my x value will be -2. But we could be off a little bit, so let's go and do the math and double check our work. So the original equation or the function is -3/4 x plus 6. I'm going to rewrite that. -3/4 x plus 6. And I'm saying if this is equal to 7.5. So when we're solving this equation, we would subtract 6 from both sides. We're left with 1.5 equals -3/4 x. When I'm solving this, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. And when I do solve it, I'm also going to turn my 1.5 into a fraction, seeing how I have -3/4, and that's a fraction, and I just want to keep everything in the same form. So I'm going to multiply by -4/3 by -4/3. And we end up with -4/3 times 3/2. We can cross reduce. That'll be a -2 over a +1. So we end up with -2 as an answer. So x is going x is going to equal -2. And that's exactly what our line said right up here. All right. Now let's do the same thing with -3 3/4. So when I rewrite this, I have -3 3/4. That's going to equal -3/4 x plus 6. When I solve this, I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. I'll be left with -9 3/4. That's going to equal -3/4 x. Again, I need to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by -4/3. Multiply by -4/3. I'm going to turn my -9 3/4 into a mixed number. So I end up with -4/3 times, that looks like -39 over 4. We can cross reduce again. 3 goes into 3 one time. 3 goes into 39 13 times. 4 goes into 4 one time. 4 goes into -4 1 time. Let's not forget the negatives. So we end up with 1 times 13, which is 13. So our answer is just 13. So 13 equals x. This ordered pair would have been written as, my y value would have been -3 3/4. My x value would have been +13. All right. So now you have the rest of the classwork to do. And I also will be posting your Delta Math in advance in case you finish up early. All right.